Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast. Today, once again, streaming here, and we're going to talk about the same thing we've been talking about yesterday as well. And I do not remember the book, and well, basically the title, but we're going to go through that after the intro, as always. And let me just quickly check out the name. And maybe we're actually gonna start from the very top today. Yesterday I've started from the very bottom for, simply because of the reason that I have already gone through it, just to see, whether it is good, whether I just kind of quote unquote believe in it, whether I think it is worth going through. And I didn't want to go through the exact same thing as well, I did not go through the whole one, and so I thought, let's just start from bottom to top so that I do not have to read the exact same thing 100 times. But it is called The Art of Worldly Wisdom from 1647 apparently, and it is a book full of maxims or aphorisms. Would actually be kind of interesting what's aphorisms, what the difference actually is, because I don't know. I do not know what the difference is. As announced, the difference between maxim and aphorism is that maxim is a self-evident axiom or premise, a pithy expression of a general principle or rule, while aphorisms is an original laconic phrase conveying some principle of concept of thought. I see. I didn't know that it is laconic. I would assume that this means that Lacan, I don't want to say philosopher, I guess scientist might be more fitting here, that he kind of coined that term, I'd assume, but anyway, a laconic phrase. Let's actually, see whether this is what I think it is. Where is it? That is. Of a person's speech or style of writing using very few words. Oh, I see. His laconic reply suggested a lack of interest in the topic. Synonym, concise or conscious. No, it's concise. Terse, short, economical, elliptical, crisp, pithy, to the point, incisive, short and sweet, and so on and so forth. But yeah, anyway. Or should we go ahead from the very bottom? No, let's just stick with the top. Develop into a high quality man. The first point. The following maxims can be seen as a general self-development and character development part. I put it first because these can be seen as the foundations of life and personal success. There, the author of the summary points out also some other links to popular articles about high-quality men / high-quality women. The 11th one, cultivate those who can teach you. Let friendly relations be a school of erudition, and conversation, refined teaching. Make your friends your teachers and blend the usefulness of learning with the pleasure of conversation. Enjoy the company of people of understanding. What you say will be rewarded with applause, what you hear with learning. What draws us to others ordinarily is our own interest, and here that interest is ennobled. Well, yeah, a lot of people have been talking about that. A lot of people have been talking about the fact that those people that you're surrounding yourself with, they do really matter. Also in terms of how you yourself develop as a person. I think especially when it comes to early childhood, but your overall school life, except university, I would say, everything up to university is very important. It's very important to have certain people around you that do indeed have good values, have a good value system, are a certain kind, because they heavily influence you, period. And I've been incredibly fortunate in that case, or in that sense, because I've quite always, my whole entire life long, been surrounded by people that are fucking amazing. Like really crucially fucking amazing. It's actually been insane, up to kind of a point where I feel guilty, I'd say. Anyway, know when to put something aside. But so yeah, coming back to the 11th maxim and the first one of the summary here, cultivate those who can teach you. Yes, surround yourself with people that are better than you. People also say, there should be kind of a percentage of people that you are better than, and there should also be a percentage of people that are better than you, and people that are the same to you, so that you do not feel bad about yourself, but you can still learn a lot in your life quite. But I don't know, I think in general it is good to have quite some people around you that are just better at whatever the fuck it might be about. Know when to put something aside. One of life's great lessons lies in knowing how to refuse, and it is even more important to refuse yourself, both to business and to others. There are certain inessential activities, moths of precious time, and it is worse to busy yourself with the trivial than to do nothing. You shouldn't abuse your friends or ask them for more than they give on their own initiative. All excess is a vice, especially in your dealings with others. With the judicious moderation, you will stay in the good graces of others and keep their esteem, and property, which is precious, will not be worn away. It's pretty interesting, it's two completely different things that he's discussing there, but still, yes, I'd underline even more, as even more than he already did it, important to refuse yourself. I think when it comes to temptations, pleasures, and things you just should not be doing, period, things that are not virtuous, maybe by the common sense, maybe by some philosophy or whatnot, but I think it's pretty good advice, I'd say. And it is worse to busy yourself with the trivial than to do nothing. Well, I don't know about that. Doing nothing is, you cannot do nothing, I'd say. When you're doing nothing laying in bed, you could just phrase it as, okay, I'm resting. It just always depends on how you think about things, as it is in life in general. If you think about something in a certain way, then, well, this is what happens. But yeah, anyway. Never lose self-respect. The 50th maxim and the third one in the summary. Let your own right feel... Why can't I read? Let your own right feeling be the true standard of your restitute, and owe more to the strictness of your own self-judgment than to all external sanctions. Avoid what is indecorous, not because others will judge you harshly, but because you fear your own prudence. Note, this talks about having higher standards for yourself than the standards that others place on you. Also see enlightened individualism for placing your own standards above those of others or society. Well, yeah, I think having pretty high standards for yourself when it comes to yourself, and therefore also being strict with yourself, is a pretty good thing. Whereas on the other hand, just really not being strict with other people, and forgiving them as well as much as you can, quote unquote, forgiving, right? What I thought about is, maybe somebody, being late or delayed or whatnot, and you just being angry about that, like, no, don't do that. But when you are getting late, sorry, then I think it's just, I think it's pretty good to be harsh to yourself and to be like, well, this is really not something I should be doing anymore, or that it's, something that should never ever happen again, quite, which I think it's good advice. And it is also something that we've seen in Stoicism before. I think it's been Marcus Aurelius saying, something along the lines of, okay, just be strict with yourself, but with other people, just, don't be that. Doesn't necessarily have to be the case. But also, no, never mind. 106. Earn respect for who you are becoming. Original title, don't flaunt your good fortune. It is more offensive to take excessive pride in your high office than in yourself. Don't play the great man. It is odious. And don't be proud of being envied. The more strenuously you seek esteem from others, the less of it you will have. It depends on respect. You can't simply grab it, you have to deserve it and wait for it. Important occupations call for a certain gravity and decorum. Keep only what the occupation requires, what you need to fulfill your obligations. Don't squeeze it dry, help it along. Those who want to look like hard workers give the impression that they aren't up to their jobs. If you want to succeed, do so using your gifts, not your outer trappings. Even a king ought to be venerated more because of his person than because of his pomp and circumstance. Well, yeah. I think in general, like, being maybe too proud of oneself, I don't know. Whether this is something good or not is, well, I wouldn't say so actually. But there's another note. Seeking esteem also means that one is giving away too much judge power to others. An enlightened individualist instead puts his own criteria before other people's judging criteria. Well, I think it heavily depends. It really, really, really heavily depends on the person. If you just believe in this person, if if this is a great friend of yours, if this is actually one of the people that is better at something than you are, the very first or second rule that we've been discussing, then of course, this person's judgment is more important than your own because they are better at whatever it is all about than you are, period. And then it really makes sense to also put this person's judgment on a pedestal. On the other hand, if this person is just worse than you, then the judgment may not be as important, but still listening is very important. I believe in the fact that whomever you might be listening to, you can still get something out of it. You can still do something with it. Whatever it may be, whatever this person may say, you can get something out of it, period. Don't believe your own hype. Show no self-satisfaction, which was the original title. You must neither, I'm actually never quite sure, be discontent with yourself and that were poor-spirited, nor self-satisfied, and that is folly. Self-satisfaction arises mostly from ignorance. It would be a happy ignorance not without its advantages if it did not injure our credit. Because a man cannot achieve the superlative perfections of others, he contents himself with any mediocre talent of his own. This trust is wise and even useful either to evade misshapes or to afford consolation when they come, for a misfortune cannot surprise a man who has already feared it. Even if Homer nods at times and Alexander fell from his lofty state and out of his illusions, things depend on many circumstances. What constitutes triumph in one set may cause a defeat in another. In the midst of all incorrigible, whatever this fucking means, folly remains the same, with empty self-satisfaction blossoming, flowering, and running all to seed. Well, self-satisfaction. I would say it actually is quite important to have some sense of self-satisfaction. There is a note. This maxim reminds us not to believe our own hype and puts things in perspective, including personal success. In ultimate power, quote unquote, we make the case that indeed your focus and pride should not be on the final result, but on your process. Well, it is something that a lot of people say, just focus on process, just make sure that the process is a good one and everything is going to be fine. Well, the problem is, the process can be amazing, the process can be good, you can learn so much from certain processes, I guess, but when you either do not achieve this end goal, never ever quite, or you cannot really calculate that, you cannot be sure that you're going to get there, or the end goal is shitty and you cannot do anything with it, then the process is also just quite unnecessary and it's also really not useful. Because the end goal is like just some shitty place to be in, and maybe even a place you do not want to be in the first place. So I think, of course, the process is important and it is also useful and intelligent to create a process that is going to give you certain benefits. As I've also done with the podcast, I learn a lot and I have been learning a lot throughout the years now. And the end goal is still there. The end goal is still one of those things and one of the places that I want to be in. But yeah, process is important, yes, but I think one should not neglect to think about the end goal, the goal, the finish line as well, and where you're going to be then. In terms of happiness, well, most often when we achieve whatever we thought we want to achieve, then happiness kind of just goes down. Of course, there's going to be a period of you being extremely happy about that, being extremely happy about the fact that you've been able to achieve this particular thing that you might have been working for a number of years, maybe even decades, and you're just amazed by that, and it is great. But what are you going to do afterwards? What is going to happen then? Then you need something else. You need another goal. You need another thing to do, and really making sure that you are engaging in a process or having a process that is amazing can kind of balance that out a little bit, I'd say. And also like stress and whatnot. Yeah, process is good, but don't make mountains out of molehills. Do not make a business of what is no business. Don't make much ado about nothing. Some taking nothing into account and others wants to account for everything. They are always taking importance, always taking things too seriously, turning them into debate and mystery. Few bothersome things are important enough to bother with. It is full... I see. It is folly to take to heart what you should turn your back on. Many things that were something are nothing if left alone, and others that were nothing turn into much because we pay attention to them. In the beginning it is easy to put an end to problems, but not later. Sometimes the cure causes the disease. Not the least of life's rules is to leave well enough alone. Few bothersome things are important enough to bother with. It is folly to take to heart what you should turn your back on. Yes, it really quite is. And it is a rule I think that we all understand. Like, okay, of course, I'm not going to bother with things I should not, things that are necessary, things that, may not be that important. But do I see it? Do I see that this particular thing is not important? Can I see it? Can I learn how to see it? Because I think in the first place, it is some sort of a blind spot quite often, that's actually one of those multiple blind spots that we have regarding different parts of life and different, areas of life. Even if, there is some graphs and diagrams and whatnot, and there is one blind spot, but I just actually want to cut it into multiple ones. But anyway, at my point of view, yes, it is just an amazing idea, but putting this into practice and actually just doing it and acting on this rule is quite difficult. Like, what is important, and this heavily depends on who you are, what you do, and so on and so forth, but maybe the 80-20 analysis can really help there. What are the 20 most important things that leads to 80% of the results? And these definitely are going to be the things that you should be doing, the things that you should be participating in, those things that, you should be working on, and so on and so forth. And all of the other things, maybe not that much, but yes, wage a clean war. I think this was actually one of those that I've really enjoyed and really liked. But yeah, the wise person can be driven to war, but not to a dishonorable one. Act like the person you are, not the way they make you act. To behave, and this is a word. Well, yes, it is a word. Guess what? Magnanimously, or magnanimously, something, I don't know, towards your rival is praiseworthy. You should fight not only to win power, but also to show that you are a superior fighter. To conquer without nobility is not victory, but surrender. The good man does not use forbidden weapons like the ones he acquires when he breaks up with a friend. Even when friendship ends in hatred, don't take advantage of the trust that was once placed in you. Everything that smacks of treasury is poison to your reputation. Noble people shouldn't have even an atom of baseness. Nobility scorns villainy. That's actually a pretty good one. Nobility scorns villainy. You should be able to boast that if gallantry, generosity, and faith were lost in the world, they could be found again in your own breast. Well, as so many things actually. And I do want to stick with that a little tiny bit because, at least in my point of view, it's up to this point one of the most important ones that we have gone through so far. I do not want to kind of idolize the fact or the thought of, I just want to be this noble man or woman. By the way, something that I really dislike about those old books, and also quite often the translations of them, that it's always about man, at least in wording. Of course, if they also meant both genders or all genders, up to debate or up for debate, but still, be quote unquote noble, be a good person, just wage a clean war, fight a clean war, because I think it is quite interesting to say, do not use forbidden weapons. And I just thought, okay, what might be the weapons, the quote unquote forbidden weapons that I have used in the past? And well, I think a good example is cheating in school, which I do not want to say it is bad, nor do I want to say it is good. Just to think a good example, and the weapon itself was the cheating tools that I've used. I don't know, writing something down and whatnot. And I have waged an unfair war, just compared to the other people that learned the stuff and so on and so forth. But still, but what is clean though, when I'm cheating and this is something that I can do in this system, like why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I use all those advantages that I can have? Especially also, and I do not necessarily think that this was meant as an example, but more as a metaphor. But when I'm in war, I'm going to use everything that I can because I want to win, because there is lives on the line, and I don't want to fuck with anything. I don't want to kind of just let anyone die. So I don't care about using forbidden weapons, quote unquote forbidden weapons, unless, of course, it is kind of still the case. Might be UNICEF. I just know about the blue helmet guys, whatnot. I may also be mixing up things, but there are certain things in war that you cannot do. Period. Shouldn't do. Just shooting down civilists. This is not something that you should be doing. And if you're gonna be, if there's gonna be any, penalties that you're gonna have to just take, then up for debate as well, because I don't know. If just the United States decides to just bomb us all down, well, what should anyone else do? Maybe Russia can do something about that, but when it is something that you do not expect, well, and everything is broken, and they don't have the means to, or theoretically they have the means to kind of answer that fire, but just the first attacker is probably going to be pretty strategic about their attacks. So in the end, what should one do? What should the world do? What should all the countries do? Create, or start another war? Is this something that we all want to have? But there's actually a link that he gave there, the gentleman warrior approach, because I do actually want to find some sort of an answer for, like, why shouldn't I use all these advantages that I could get? There are some situations in life where you have an enemy or an opponent you want to beat, and they know it too. You will sometimes have the power to choose your mindset and approach to the fight/competition. Some people choose the antagonizing and hating road, and some others choose a more gentleman quote-unquote approach. The mindset is, yes, we are enemies and we want to beat each other, and I'll be darn best to beat you, but we can still be courteous, I guess, while we compete. It is a bit like the mindset of tough on ideas but kind on people, which in this case becomes tough in the game/fight, but kind on the opponent outside of the game fight. Call it the gentleman warrior approach. It can take some emotional maturity to achieve this mindset and approach, as most people can easily get swept away by the competitive spirit. Let's see some applications in real life. The attitude of antagonizing. Michael Francese, I'd say. I became a major target of law enforcement, exactly what he wants to avoid. I was indicted 5 times, beat every case. That is a huge red flag. Your enemy is doggedly trying to take you down. Rudy told me, Francese, if I could, if I convict you on this, you're gonna get double what your father got. I'm gonna give you 100 years. I said, Rudy, bring it on. I beat you 4 times. Let's go for round 5. By the way, for all the podcast listeners, there is a video. I'm just not watching the video, but there is some sort of a transcription of it. Exactly right. That type of attitude gives them incentives to come after you harder and to punish you harder if they can catch you. Furthermore, if convicted, you also provide them a valid reason to treat you like a devilish enemy, very different from a gentleman's enemy. That is an attitude that some criminals and mobsters have against the police, and it only makes their life, as well as the police life, harder. Flaunting how you're beating them will also make your enemy more dodged in your pursuit. See John Gotti or Al Capone. Or actually, I think Al Capone, I guess. I'm actually not quite sure. They both might have stayed free far longer if they had avoided the spotlight and the attitude of, I beat them and I rub it in. The effect of antagonizing. Before the rights of detainees were extended, beatings of detainees were also common of lower level mobsters, mostly as cops were also probably word of assaulting higher power mobsters. Now that's actually the gentleman warrior attitude. Now compare with mobster Joseph Massino, who instead took a far more friendly with law enforcement. Get used to my face because you're going to see a lot of it for a long time. Pat Marshall, the agent who had been hunting Massimo. Have I? Joseph Massino. It's not Massimo, but Massino with an N. Forewarned when he was brought to FBI headquarters. Pat starts off with a competitive frame. Marshall recognizes that he was confronting an imperturbable foe. He took my warning with a grain of salt and said calmly, no problem, do what you got to do. Which is, basically ignoring the competitive frame and installs a gentleman's frame to their competition, I assume. Can't read it. In some other stories in the book, I'm reading 5 Families. Massino called the FBI agents by name and was always courteous. In one instance, he even defended an FBI agent who was being encircled and then gave him back the electronic surveillance device Massino had uncovered. The gentleman warrior effects. Being courteous, I should actually look the word up, towards the enemy might not prevent you from losing. Yes, definitely not. In our case study here, the law will still take its course, but it won't hurt for sure, and it might as easily soften your loss and shorten your sentence. Plus, it will likely make the process and the possible conviction far easier on you and definitely also on the other person. From the same book, picked up at this Howard Beach home, Massino politely asked to be cuffed outside, not in the presence of his wife and teenage daughters. Because he was always the gentleman and cordial with us, Marshall granted him that favor. I see, that's amazing. The gentleman warrior in war. The same 2 approaches can be found in wars. The gentleman's approach to war is to fight and kill and do everything to win. But towards other fighters, not towards the civilian population. And if you capture the enemy fighter, torture and mass slaughtering are off the table. When a gentleman's warrior frame is lost, that is where it can get far uglier and when civilians also become targets. Version 2 on London, Dresden bombing, Japan refusing to treat POWs humanly, and nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And there are some other things of other people, from other people, by other people, whatnot. Yes, I think it's really amazing. Really often, especially when you're dealing with authorities, playing a quote-unquote role, I don't want to say that, it sounds so manipulative, but playing the role of the, lower being, of the person that knows that, he cannot or she cannot do that much about the situation, most often is better than confronting the people, just being aggressive and being whatnot. it's not going to do any good to you, nor does it do any good to the other person. Also when it comes to the final judgment. Of course, if you're being an asshole, they're going to judge you differently, and they're going to just really try as hard as they can to, well, really fuck you in that sense. Anyway, gonna end the episode there. Thanks for listening and or watching, and we're gonna see each other maybe the next time. So bye bye.